Welcome back to another episode of Lost in the Farmer's Market Garden Shorts, where today we're going to be talking about this herb before you. The pointy stick of destiny is pointing at the herb, though its cousins are seen in the pots too. Now, this plant before you is its scientific name is Foeniculum vulgare, also known as fennel. Now, I like to call this plant black fennel, and I'll get to reasons why in a moment. Now, fennel is in the Apiaceae family, which is the carrot parsley family. Now, as you can see, there's a carrot growing right here, and over there is celery, another cousin. But the carrot slash parsley family also includes obviously parsley and obviously carrots, but it also includes dill, coriander slash cilantro, anise, Queen Anne's lace, and a bunch of other things. So it's a pretty diverse seasoning herb family, but fennel is still one of my favorites. Now, the name in English originated from Middle English, fennel, F-E-N-E-L, or F-E-N-Y-L, which then came from Old English, phenol, F-E-N-O-L, or phenol, F-I-N-O-L. But that then is derived from the original Latin slash Greek words, which basically is a diminutive meaning hay. Which, I mean, with all this fluffy foliage and on a traditional fennel plant, which is greener, when it dries and turns yellow, it does kind of look like hay. So I could see that. Fennel was so popular in the Roman era that one emperor demanded that by imperial decree, demanded that every farm grow fennel. I mean, I find that fascinating. Now, of course, where did it come from? Southern Europe, specifically along the Mediterranean Sea. So that should tell you why it was so important to Greeks and Romans. It grows in USDA zones 6 through 10, though in 2 through 5 it's considered a biennial and not a hardy perennial. Here, in zone 8B, 8A, it is in fact a perennial. And boy, is it a perennial. It's a perennial to the point that we use it for xeriscaping because it requires so little care once established. Plus, I mean, look at it. It's fluffy and fabulous. Now, it likes a soil pH of 6.5 to 7.5, which is common for herbs. It's sort of alkaline, sort of neutral. Its exposure is full to partial sun, but in this case I have it in partial with afternoon protection. Everything in this plant row is protected from afternoon sun, which allows me to get optimal growing results. Now, its height at maximum, after several years of growing, can be up to 8 feet tall, including flowering stalks. In cultivation, I have yet to see proof of this. 3 feet, 4 feet is a bit more normal. In fact, this specimen here is probably 2 feet, and it is not yet begun to fennel. Fennel, in this climate, is somewhat evergreen. Semi-evergreen. It gets a hard frost, it's going to knock some foliage down, but I mean, compared to other things, it will retain this lovely lacy foliage regardless. Now, its width can be 1 to 2 feet, though, again, this plant's pushing that. And that one over there is definitely pushing it also, even though it's more narrow. I mean, look at it. It's fabulous. But anyway, the Greek name for fennel, interestingly, is marathon. Because the word marathon refers to a place where there were fields of fennel, which somehow makes this plant a little more epic. I mean, don't really good stories start with some historical analog? But it gets better. In Greek mythology, Prometheus used a giant stalk of fennel, hid fire in it, and carried it from Olympus to Earth. Because, I mean, what's a great old-timey herb without some kind of mythological story of how a god or a titan brought something to humanity for their benefit? Now, we're going to talk about 2 different types, and this is where we get into the interesting thing. First and foremost, well, we're going to get into that in a second. Florence fennel is that weird type you see at the supermarket with the fat bulbous base. It's often mislabeled as anise, when in fact it's actually green fennel, and it's a specific type that produces fatter leaf stalk endings. And if you look at mine, you can see how that's shaped. Imagine those leaf stalks being almost round, forming a true bulb, even though it's actually above ground growth and technically not a bulb at all. It's just fat leaf stalks. Depending on type, all parts can be eaten, which is very true. Now, I did a short video of one of these fennel plants Not these two, but another one, where I had taken it out of its pot to show the root off, and the taproot looks like a wrinkly, looks like a wrinkly carrot. Because, of course, in order to sustain all this growth, you got to have some root mass, and a lot of the members of this plant family are big on taproots. They don't like having them disturbed, though. I was very gentle, and it also got a much larger pot on par with these two, so it'll be fabulous in a short time. Yep. Now, let me move on to nutrition real quick. Per 100 grams, or 3.5 ounces, you will find in fennel 52 grams of carbs, 14.9 grams of fat, 15.8 grams of protein, 0.41 milligrams of B1, 0.35 milligrams of B2, 6.1 milligrams of B3, 21 milligrams of vitamin C, 1,196 milligrams of calcium, 1,694 milligrams of potassium, 487 milligrams of phosphorus, and 385 milligrams of magnesium. Now there's more to that, but I wanted to cover the big ones so that I could get to the interesting stuff about fennel. Now, I mentioned Florence fennel as being the one with the bulb. And I mentioned that it's often mislabeled as anise. Its scientific name is Foeniculum vulgare azoricum group. And there are older synonyms for its name too, but that's what it's called. Now, that variety, I used to buy that up north and add it to the soup to add intense flavor. I mean, it's good stuff. You really should try it. I mean, it is a little pricey down here in the south, but, you know, for that butt-kicking flavor, why the hell not? Now, we get to the plant in front of you. Bronze fennel. Foeniculum vulgare purpureum or nigra. Now this is fully edible and potentially more nutritious than its green cousin. It's often only, and I might say quite ignorantly, used as a decoration because people think, oh wow, it's a funny color, I can't eat that. Wrong. It actually has a slightly different, more pungent flavor than the traditional, but it can be used in recipes just the same. Floating a few dark fronds on top of a yellow soup broth is amazing presentation. But also, this is commonly called bronze fennel, but in my opinion, this plant is hardly bronze colored. I don't know why they call it that. The scientific epithet, that is purpureum, implies that it's purple colored. It's not purple at all, in any way, shape, or form. Stab! Okay? Nigra, which means black. Well, yeah, it is kind of a dark grayish green or black. That fits. That's why I call it black fennel. I honestly think some horticultural bias came in there, but I'm not, of course I can't prove that, but that's my professional opinion. Now, what's great about this plant is that it doesn't require much. It is a very pungent edible herb. It is a great companion to have near tomatoes. It's adaptable for container culture. It does not require fertilizer, but if you give it some of that nitrogen-based fertilizer, you're going to get growth like this, which is totally worth it. And then what happens is sometime in the summer, the swallowtail butterflies come and lay their eggs on it, and you get those yellow and black caterpillars that you can poke, and they stick out these little bright orange, almost neon antler things that have chemical defenses, and they'll, you know. Now, the downside to that is, of course, inevitably wasps eat these larvae. But you're helping bring up the butterfly population by growing fennel. Swallowtails love fennel. I mean, they'll go after parsley, sure, whatever, but they won't seem to touch any of the other cultivated types. I don't have problems with them on the celery or the carrots, but they will go after this. And by doing that, you're helping conserve certain aspects of nature. Plus, you're getting a good seasoning herb out of the deal, too, so it's a win-win for you. The fennel will recover. Mark my words, you give it enough, if you give it nitrogen, it will grow. Anyway, it'll recover, and you'll have some. And of course, there's the fact that the swallowtails are a brief portion of the season, the summer. You'll have fennel year-round, so it doesn't really matter. You know, it's sort of like planting milkweed to get the larvae to eat the milkweed so that you can get more butterflies. It doesn't matter in the long run. Now, as a final note on why you should grow this plant in your garden, Well, first and foremost, in the southeast I notice what passes for Italian food is actually Greek food. And even then, it's not really good Greek food, because they don't use caraway, they don't use cumin or cilantro correctly, they do not put fennel in anything. In fact, when you buy sweet Italian sausage, it should have fennel in it. It does all the time up north, and that's the way it's supposed to taste. Here, not so much. You should grow fennel, if only to supply yourself with a strong herb which does have some medicinal properties, but has a host of culinary uses. Plus, it's a perennial, and it's good for xeriscaping. It's a low water plant. And if anything, you get this big, bushy, airy foliage that, you can use for all kinds of things. Even if you don't eat it, it's still cool to look at, and the bright yellow flowers that eventually emerge are totally worth it. Plus, the seed's edible. I did forget to mention that. I wouldn't advise digging it up for the root because then you killed a perfectly good plant. You can get several years of vegetable matter out of a plant, but once you dig up the root, it's done and over with, and it may take up to 2 years for a new plant to establish. These are 2-year-old plants, for example. But I guess that summarizes fennel in a nutshell. So if you like this episode, hit the like and subscribe. If you have any comments, leave them down in the comments box. Hit up the blog, and as always, folks, keep them growing. Thanks for watching.